All right, guys. I got a 5-piece of stats that you need to know for Sunday's game against the Cowboys. Not the greatest 5-piece of all time, but I think I did a pretty good job finding some stuff we haven't talked about yet. We spent a ton of time talking about the Browns' home and road splits defensively last year, right? We know how much better the Browns were defensively at home. 13.9 opponent points per game at home, 31.3 on the road, 13 touchdowns allowed at home, 29 on the road. The sacks were out of control. The reality is, a lot of quarterbacks play much better at home than they do on the road. But when you look at Dak Prescott's splits, he is significantantly outside the range of average of margin for how much better a quarterback plays at home than on the road. Take a look at these numbers. At home, Dak has a 43-15 record. On the road, slightly above 500. It's essentially the same amount of games. He's played 2 more home games than road games. But check out the touchdown and interception split at home versus on the road. 118-35 at home, 84-39 on the road. His quarterback rating, 105 at home, 92.6 on the road. When you combine how much better Dak plays at home than on the road and how much better the Browns' defense is, or at least was last season at home than on the road, it could be a very good day for this Browns defense.
Yeah, but the problem is, Mike, his numbers on the road are still good.
They're still really good. That's
not as good. They're not as good.
No, but they're still elite.
His numbers at home are just like ridiculous. They're like Hall of Fame level, and his numbers on the road are really good.
Really good.
Really good.
It's still over a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception, and his quarterback rating, is over a 90. I mean, that's still pretty good.
Yeah, 92.6.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing it out.
It's not like he sucks.
Pointing it out.
A lot of that, it's like, he sucks on the road. He's great at home. No, he doesn't suck on the road. He's just not as
He's
good.
been a very, very, very good quarterback.
Yeah.
I would be interested to see what very, very good quarterbacks did last year against the Browns at home. Like Brock Purdy, I don't think he played all that well.
There weren't many great quarterbacks that played in Cleveland last year.
Burrow in week 1.
Burrow week 1. Purdy
Bad
played.
weather.
Lamar Jackson.
He played well when they played
well
in
when
Cleveland.
it was there. Who else?
They faced Clayton Tune.
Trevor Lawrence.
No, Lawrence, he played okay. He threw for a bunch of yards, but it wasn't a great game.
I think he threw like 3 picks though.
On a ankle sprain.
He didn't play good. Yeah, he did not play well.
The Browns had a very favorable home schedule with quarterbacks, like between injuries and weather
They did.
and things like that. So,
Well, we're gonna take all that too. If y'all want to
take it and run.
100%.
If y'all want to get injured and have bad weather again, we all for the smoke. Like, feel free to not show up, dog. Like, I think one of the things is, this year, you're going to see 2 teams that you don't know very much about in terms of what they're gonna run off bat as far as their offense. Defense is always gonna be ahead of the offense because all they got to do is attack. My thing is, we talked a lot about the Browns, we talked a lot about the offense, but defensively, I've been steadfast in saying they play a lot of man coverage, and the Browns, specifically on the road, give up big plays. The big plays, the long runs, things like that, the Browns have had a tendency to do that. I think they need to play some more zone, not all the time, but to give a little switch up because they were getting run around in terms of back and forth motion. Guys were open more because they were in man coverage trying to follow and trail people. I think they do need a couple wrinkles in some zone. But to me, this is a game where the Browns defense, if you are that and you are an elite group, you got to come in, and I don't care if Dak Prescott is traditionally good on the road. You got to make him work for it. Like, the Browns defense has to be the reason why they win this football game because I'm not sure that you can count on the offense to get 35 points immediately.
No.
We talked about the perfect storm for Myles Garrett earlier, right? Let me give you some extra numbers, a little context to it. We talked about how Myles is so good in September. He averages 1.325 sacks per game in September, the highest of any month. He's also playing an NFC East team. Myles Garrett's 4-0 against the NFC East. He averages 1.5 sacks per game against NFC East opponents. It's only 4, but still, it's the highest per sack game of Myles' career against any division. It's also in September and week 1 where he has 30 sacks over the first 4 weeks of the season, and at home where he has 46 sacks over 42.5 on the road. I'd be very scared if I was Dak Prescott.
I think the NFC East thing, it's kind of an anomaly. It's a small sample size. Right. And he's not playing against the NFC East tomorrow. They're an NFC East team, but a lot of those teams that he's done that against, the personnel has come and gone. I do like the September numbers, though, Mike. I mean, this dude goes to eat in September. And what he does is he gets such a head start on everybody that he's got a nice little lead going into October, November, and December. But I like how he plays in September. So I think that bodes well for him.
Yeah, none of those stats are surprising. I mean, again, I don't, who did they beat to get to that 4-0?
They beat the Giants, they beat the Eagles, they beat the Cowboys, and they beat Washington.
They beat them all once?
Oh, I don't know. I just thought you were asking who the NFC East teams were.
Yeah.
We know the NFC
I'm just
East.
saying, if it was like the Giants and Washington twice, well, those teams have been bad.
Well, they played Washington.
Right, they played the Giants.
They played the Giants.
So at least two of them are, and it was just funny to see a record.
They played the
Myles
Cowboys.
Garrett's record against,
Yeah, the NFC East.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, listen, I'm trying to pull stats that we haven't talked about 3,000
Yeah, it's good.
times.
It's good. I mean, we know how dominant he is in September. So it's not surprising. Do you know where that ranks, his stats or his sacks per game in September compared to anybody other players?
If you give me one, who do you want to hear?
I'm just I wonder if that's one of the best of all time to be averaging over a sack. What was that? 1 1/3 sacks per game for an entire month.
1.325 sacks per game in September.
That's crazy.
You want to hear TJ?
That
you wanna
puts
hear
you on
TJ
pace
Watts?
for over 20.
You want to hear TJ Watts?
Yeah, sure.
It's not as good as Myles. I got to do the math. He has 21 sacks in 19 games in September. So
it's good.
A little over
really
one.
good, but it's like
who
probably,
else? Give me someone else. Micah Parsons. When this loads, he averages for his career in 9 games in September. He has 9.5 sacks, so 1 per game.
About 1 a game.
just over
Try
1.
Aaron Donald for fun.
Yeah.
Aaron Donald, through his career in September, played 31 games and had 17 sacks.
Wow, that's not a lot.
So
What
the
about-
opposite.
No, but he's probably more
How about Reggie
spread
White?
out
I was
through
going to
the
say Bruce
years.
Smith, but yeah, Reggie White and
Reggie
Bruce
White
Smith.
or Bruce Smith?
Yeah, he had 36.5 sacks in 37 December games. Who'd you say, Bruce Smith?
That's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
what I want.
Yeah,
Bruce Smith or Reggie White?
both of those guys, and then that's
Bruce Smith. This is taking a second to load. Bruce Smith in September played 58 games, had 41 sacks.
Okay.
And Reggie White. Reggie White
Yeah.
had. So, regardless of what Reggie White had,
Yeah.
it's going to be not nearly as high.
Okay, so go to
Reggie White had 54 games, 45.5 sacks.
And what about Lawrence Taylor?
If I had 3 hands, this would be so nice.
This would be great. You need a third hand. Let's get it together. Maybe get a prosthetic arm.
Can't you cut one of Ant's off?
Could I cut one of Ant's hands off?
Yeah.
Just borrow it.
Just start using it. Let's go.
Maybe. All right. In September, Lawrence Taylor, 43 games, 32 sacks. Less than a sack a game.
All right, Myles Garrett might be the best of all time that's played a certain amount of games.
But I don't know that that's necessary. That's like a baseball player saying, I have the all-time highest batting average in April.
I hear you. I'm just it's still impressive.
I want Mr. October.
Yeah.
I don't want Mr. April. I want
gotcha.
Mr. December. I don't want Mr. September.
As good as Myles Garrett is, he's actually underrated.
I don't know.
I don't know that he's
I
underrated.
I
think
give you underrated because people actually think T.J. Watt is close to him, which is wild. It's not even the same
I
territory.
think you're wrong nationally. I think everybody says he's the best guy.
But
yeah.
I
to
think
G's
he's
point, though, I
underrated
disagree.
in this-
I disagree that there's a huge gap
Oh, yeah.
between T.J. Watt and Myles Garrett.
There is.
I just don't see that. I see that Watt is as productive to me, and the fact that I want my superstar at his best when the games mean the most.
That is fair.
And that is a huge.
The one thing I would
huge
argue,
thing to
though, is that compared to all the guys we're talking about,
Ever.
Myles Garrett has not had great players around him. Now, it's better now than it was in the past. T.J. Watt's been playing with a Hall of Fame defensive tackle.
That's true.
For his
Forever.
entire
Massive
career.
difference. That makes
That makes a
massive
huge difference. And I'll admit, this is just kind of...
Look at the Steelers' record with those Hall of Fame players.
Yeah.
Without T.J. Watt.
Yeah,
It is eye-popping.
I don't think it's
They
enough.
almost never win
I
when
think
T.J.
it's-
Watt doesn't play.
Most of that was in 1 year. I just don't buy that that's a proof of anything for me. But
when you look at it, the sheer numbers of having 2 to 3 people on you is like that can never be understated.
I agree with that.
When you're a defensive lineman and you are playing, and I'll give Myles Garrett credit for this.
But how can you be underrated when you're the defensive player of the year?
I agree with everything on Myles Garrett except him being underrated.
Because we like sometimes there's always this thing where we want more. They're like, okay, got 14.
I want more. See, I don't think that's underrated. I think that means we think he's so great that he should be doing things that have never been done.
I agree with Bull.
I agree with Bull. If you want to be in that conversation as the greatest to ever do it, yes, you have to demand more.
I will say this, that if you were not allowed to double team defensive linemen, if that was illegal,
could you imagine?
I don't think the stats would be close between J.J. Watt and Myles
I agree with that.
If you look,
but that's the reality.
But you got to look at that piece as a defensive lineman.
Yeah,
that's everything. Like we talk about disruption, right? When you set a game plan, you got to put 3 dudes and allocate 3 resources to 1 dude. So that means when people say he changes the game, he changes the game at a whole nother level, because guess what? Now there's you can't do certain things to other people. And if Myles Garrett, we've been looking for another guy to step up and do it, because every single other player that plays for the Cleveland Browns will never get double teamed. You know what that means?
That is correct.
They'll never see one.
And by the way, for all the criticism of the Browns, and it's fair in the history of the Steelers, I'm pretty sure Myles Garrett has 2 playoff wins and T.J. Watt has 0.
Yes, right?
Does
TJ? I think TJ.
No, TJ has 0.
Steelers haven't won a playoff game in forever.
Myles has won.
Myles has won. Yeah.
Sorry.
But here's what I think Jay's saying. G, he's seen those triple teams in September too.
Yeah.
So why are the numbers
not worn down by them in September?
She made a point yesterday, and it's a good point, and I'll repeat it. Perhaps the reason his production has consistently slid is because you're exhausted by December from fighting through all of those triple.
That's right.
Then and they were overplaying those guys earlier on. Then I know it's Myles, you want him on the field for every snap, but then monitor the snaps if you have to, because you need the production in December.
Right.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I think they should cut down his snap percentage. It would make him even better. He's had some injuries which have affected him late in some seasons. Right. A lot of it is being worn down by the season.
I think he's the greatest defensive player in the game. Period.
I do too.
But I also I've run the numbers. He is on pace. He could be the greatest sack leader in the history of the game. And part of that's because they throw it more than they did when Bruce Smith and Reggie White played in that. But if you want that standard, you're going to be held to a different standard.
Yes.
Nobody's saying T.J. Watt could be the greatest defensive end and the greatest sack leader ever.
But when you add the list of names in there that belong in his category, I think T.J. Watt is fairly that elite level of player.
Yeah, he's
and
elite.
It's very difficult and almost never happens where, and we could be looking at it right now, where one player, and we talked about this earlier this season, is so good that he belongs in a category all his own. And I think that Patrick Mahomes is there.
100%.
And then your second-tier quarterbacks are 2 through 6.
I mean, look at LeBron and KD.
Exactly.
KD is elite.
Exactly.
LeBron is the greatest ever.
And there's a huge gap between the two.
And I say as great as LeBron is underrated. Like people when
he'll tell you that. He'd love to hear that.
When it's all said and done, and this is just no disrespect. The Jordan conversation it goes back to this boiled down, but he's not the same type of athlete. LeBron is the best athlete with the best IQ.
Yeah.
And I think the best all-around player.
In the best overall game.
But he has said more than once, I spoil you all. That's why I spoil you all. And you can
he's
say
not
that
wrong.
about Myles.
And when he's gone, you're going to be like, dang, he was real good. You have to go back and look at it.
It's funny. I think his cockiness turns some people off. But Michael,
you think Michael wasn't cocky?
But I was just about to say, Michael was just as cocky, but there wasn't as much coverage.
Michael's 60, and he's still cocky.
Yeah.
And Michael has the the cultural phenomenon, to this day, it just is what it is. If I'm going to buy a pair of shoes and they rare, I'm not going in there to look for no KDs or Kyries or LeBrons. I got a couple pair.
Yeah.
But you ain't recognized in no sneaker community until you got the Jordans, and they got to be a certain type, right? He still has shoes, but the 12 or 13 is what it is. The cultural phenomenon of Michael Jordan can never be eclipsed.
I agree with that. I think his impact on the sport was the same as Tiger's impact on golf, but because basketball in our culture is more important, he is number one in a class all of his own, especially when it comes to, like you said, the cultural phenomenon that was Michael Jordan. He's still selling shoes.
Yeah, that's right.
Still
Hasn't
not.
dribbled a basketball in 25 years.
But bringing it back to Myles Garrett, and why were we talking about Myles? Oh, because of the stats that he gave. Yeah, it's not unfair to say he needs to be better.
Yeah, there's some things he can improve on. Because I think, like I've always said this, like, hey, it's just as disruptive as you are in the pass game. You could be there. You could do that in the run game.
That's right.
I think Bull's point was nationally he's rated properly. If you were to ask the country, is Myles Garrett underrated? They would mostly, I would think, say no.
Yeah.
He's one of the best players in the league, and he is rated as one of the best.
He was voted second overall by the Pete Prisco list, and he was top 5 by the NFL players.
So I don't know how you could be underrated if all of that is true.
I don't think anybody outside of Pittsburgh thinks T.J. Watt's better than Myles Garrett.
I think
if they're being honest.
What I mean by underrated is, like, if you just, like, to be that, like, just playing the position of defensive end, right, and just looking at another person and being like, man, this dude is like almost 300 pounds. Like, this dude is faster than everybody. He bends in a way no one bends. He's strong. He's quick. He has all of these different traits like he's just as quick as Lawrence Taylor, but he's big like Reggie White, and he's strong like Bruce Smith's crazy.
I think I know why. He hasn't done it in the playoffs. Like, he needs those
Right.
prime
He's
time
gotta
games.
have some moments.
Aaron Donald's profile, as high as it was, skyrocketed when he made 2 Super Bowl saving plays at the end of the game.
He has spent the bulk of his career on a toxic, dysfunctional organization.
Absolutely.
Now, they're not that way now.
No.
But they were for quite a few of his years.
They were.
Like Joe, and I'll give you that. Joe Thomas, to me, like, if you look on skill set, it's probably the best, to me, skill set, pound for pound.
Now, let's not get crazy.
Listen, Orlando.
Nobody's better than Anthony Munoz. Stop it.
Really?
Yeah,
you believe that?
I agree with Bull.
I think Orlando Pace is better than Anthony Munoz.
No.
Listen,
To me, Anthony Munoz is the gold standard.
By the way, there's really no way to prove it. It's just
it's not.
All I know is I saw Anthony Munoz in 3 weeks in a row hold Reggie White, Bruce Smith, and Lawrence Taylor to 0 sacks. And that's all I needed to know.
You can. There's lots of great talent, but what I'm saying is,
no, I get it.
Anthony Munoz benefited from being in the Super Bowl, right?
That's true.
And
although the Bengals are not a high-profile team, but he went to the Super Bowl twice.
People know Joe Thomas was good.
He took them to the Super Bowl.
But he never got that spotlight on him that the playoffs bring. Like, you know what I'm saying? You kind of need that a little bit. And I think that's the only difference between Joe Bitonio being in that conversation of, like, hey, he could possibly be a Hall of Famer because he hasn't had success in the playoffs.
But especially a defensive lineman, because an offensive lineman, for the most, I mean, you're not making any splash plays.
Right.
Whereas a defensive lineman, if he...
Yeah, to get there, you have to be Joe Thomas to make it to the Hall of Fame without ever playing in a playoff game. You have to be, to the eye test, the best in the game for a decade.
That's it.
And Joe was.
You know, Myles Garrett's going to be a Hall of Famer, but he hasn't had that moment, that special moment in the big spot.
It's coming this year.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hope so, because Patrick Mahomes looks like he doesn't. I don't like this dude, man.
Yeah.
This dude is just,
I know.
like,
It almost,
very
To
disheartening.
me, it feels like being a great team in
the Jordan era.
In the Jordan era, yes. Being a great team in the East in the Jordan era. Because you might be like Baltimore.
No, the West, you mean?
Baltimore. No.
Oh, no. You said East.
I'm saying the NBA's version of the East. What I'm saying is Baltimore, especially this morning, has to be saying, we're likely the second best team in the NFL. I mean, San Francisco lost to them in overtime, so they're right there with them.
Yeah.
But being the bridesmaid in a conference is awful because you never get that chance to play for the championship.
But unlike basketball, it only takes one win.
Yeah,
That's
it does.
true. You have to beat them 4 times.
Here's how you know
once.
you good. My wife is from the Philippines. She never watched football a day in her life until she got here. She's a huge NFL fan. And when the game was over, this is her watching football all of 2 years. We've been dedicating our whole life. She says, babe, I don't know. Browns, they fooled me. I don't know. I feel bad about them. I said, well, what you talking about? They ain't play yet. No. She said, that Patrick Mahomes is just did something different.
She's smart.
He is something different.
She's a great observer.
I was like, yeah.
You got to get past that to get to the biggest game in the sport.
He just
and
finds
you know what?
these plays.
He's under 30. He's got more hardware at anybody's had at that age. And he's not going away.
Unlike Watson and Lamar and Burrow, he's not injury prone.
No.
Even when you think he injured, he just Like, no, don't take me out of the game.
Remember 2 years ago when they won the first Super Bowl, well, the first of this back-to-back, he sprained his ankle against the Dolphins.
We thought he wasn't going to play.
And then he played against the Bengals, and he still played, even with his bad ankle, against the team that had beaten them the year before in the playoffs. He still got it done.
Yeah, he's incredible. All right, we'll fly through these last three because I want to get to the playoff picks and our pre-written headlines. But the guy Myles Garrett's going to have to go up against this Sunday. Tyler Guyton making his first career NFL start. He was the highest-graded PFF tackle in the preseason, but I don't give that any credence because Myles set every PFF pass rushing record last year, advantage heavily in the favor of the Browns. Steve, let's go right to the next one. Talk about negative plays. Both these defenses last year were in the top 3 in the NFL in negative play percentage. This was from a defensive standpoint. Plays that the opponent ran that went for 0 or negative yard. 41.3% of plays against the Browns last year went for 0 yards or negative yards. That was
crazy.
the highest.
I wonder how many in the playoff game went for negative or 0.
None.
I don't have that off the top of my hand, but that's the highest number
crazy.
Amazon Next Gen Stats had tracked since they started tracking that stat. The
Which
Ravens
is when? When did they start
also,
tracking?
Yeah, do we know how long they've been doing
2015 or 16. I forget the top of my head.
that? That's a
15 or
10-year
16.
sprint. That's pretty impressive,
Yeah.
man.
And then the Cowboys
because the
obviously
Ravens
were-
and the Bears probably would have exceeded.
Oh,
that.
yeah, sure.
The Cowboys were 3rd in that stat. Now, they lost a bunch of guys and their defensive coordinator, but worth pointing out that these were two of the best teams in the NFL at
41%.
completely
I wouldn't have guessed the
stuffing
Falcons.
I would not have
last year.
guessed the Falcons in the
I
top
wouldn't have
5.
either.
That's the surprise.
I think it's because a lot of teams passed against the Falcons last year,
So
and
incomplete
incompletions
passes
count
go
as
for 0.
0%.
No,
Okay.
That's my
interesting.
But that's
my
not a
guess,
negative,
But
that's
yeah,
a
they're the
zero.
one.
0. He said
They're
0
the one
or negative.
outlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, 0 or negative.
Now,
Got it.
the way you could really drill down on that and eliminate the incomplete passes would be the negative yardage plays. But I bet the Browns are still number 1 in that category.
Yeah, I'd like to know that specifically. But go ahead, Mike.
And last to know, very last one, we've talked about this a little before. I got the official numbers. The Browns, after the Deshaun Watson restructure, are spending in cash $329 million this year. That's first in the NFL. The Cowboys, even after the CeeDee Lamb restructure, are spending just $221 million.
Poverty
in the
franchise.
NFL. That's dead last in the league.
If you're below the Bengals,
By the way, the Bengals
real quick.
Bengals
Since
are middle of the
2021,
pack.
'Cause of Burrow.
that graphic's wrong. That's since 2021. Excuse me, I put that wrong. The Browns, and I believe 1,000 million's a billion, but I wasn't sure, so I put it exactly how the graphic said.
Yes, 1,000 million is a billion.
Yeah, so they spent $1 billion in cash since 2021. The Cowboys just $750 million.
And they both have this. Well, the Browns do have
Browns
one
have a
playoff win to show for it.
Yeah.
The Browns have spent $1 billion since 21.
That have 0 playoff wins.
Well, their
in that
playoff
time.
win was in 20.
Yeah.
So they've spent $1 billion and have 0 playoff
That's
wins.
wild.
And the Guardians, over the last 3 years, oh my
spent
God.
$4.78.
Right.
And since then, by the way,
And they have
that gap,
coupons.
the Browns, number 1 in spending, Cowboys, dead last in spending.
Yeah, you said that.
Never would have guessed that.
Not
I
just
the
this
Cowboys-
year,
never would've
but
guessed
the whole
that.
time.
And the Cowboys have got to be the most valuable franchise in football.
Well, the list just came out. They are number 1.
Yeah,
Are they
of
number
course.
1?
Yep.
Cowboys,
But
Niners,
you see where
Giants.
the Browns were?
Yeah,
I
did.
thought they were
Browns.
worth $5 billion. They have them worth $6 billion.
Where were the Browns in the list?
in the 20s.
Yeah,
I saw the Browns.
Director Steve says 22.
I think that is right. I glanced at
But
it.
I mean, most of those teams are separated by.
Not a lot.
Fractional.
Yeah.
Fractional. And by the way, a pre-sale evaluation is a guess.
Yeah.
You're worth what someone
What
actually
someone will pay
pays
for.
That's right.
you to have the franchise.
And I wonder how that goes up. Would they get a new stadium? Does that?
Yeah,
Oh, it
100%.
absolutely goes
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
particularly because it'll be owned by the team.
Now that was
by the owner.
CNBC, right? Because the
that-
Forbes
that-
rankings, every team
That was
executive
CNBC.
screams that Forbes is inaccurate, and then they always sell for about what Forbes says.
Forbes
So-
is really good at
Yeah,
this.
I know.
These teams
I
are
know.
all full of crap.
And the teams hate the fact that Forbes is as good as they
Oh,
are.
yeah.
I know.
And they scream all the time.
Because they
it's
don't
not
want
accurate.
people to know they're being
No,
cheap.
it's accurate. I
Yeah.
mean, they do a really good job.
Yeah.
And you're right. I don't know if it's the buyers are looking at Forbes valuation and saying, yeah, we'll give that.
Right.
And I don't think that's the case. I think they have their own people that dive into it, look at it, look at their cash stream,
Yeah.
how much they make each year. There's a process to
Yeah.
evaluate something. And Forbes has got this down to a science.
Yep.
We got to do playoff picks and pre-written headlines, so I want to do super chats